The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with silence as the sentence was read out loud. Princess Leora of the Xeran Empire. For your attack on the human aid vessel during the ceasefire, the Council finds you guilty. But to avoid further war between species, your punishment will not be death. Instead, you are to marry a human soldier. A loud gasp moved through the hall. Leora's bright blue eyes narrowed. Her fingers curled tightly into fists, her silver armor still stained from battle. She had fought proudly for her people. She stood among aliens, humiliated, and worse tied to a human. She didn't speak. She didn't argue. She only stared coldly as the decision was final. On the other side of the room stood a man in plain clothes. He wasn't tall, wasn't muscular, and didn't seem important. He had a tired face, light brown hair, and kind eyes. His name was Ethan, and he had agreed to the marriage not because he wanted to, but because he was told this would bring peace. Ethan wasn't a hero. He had lost too many friends in the war already. He just wanted peace, real peace, not words. And if marrying an alien warrior would stop more blood from spilling, he could live with it. They were taken to a small outpost on a quiet moon, a neutral place away from war. It had air, water, and a small home built into the rocks. It was just the two of them. The first day, Leora refused to enter the same room as Ethan. She walked stiffly, like her pride was a wall around her. When Ethan tried to speak, she cut him off with sharp words. "I do not need your help, human. Do not speak to me unless required." Ethan nodded. Okay, she was surprised. No protest, no anger. It's just that simple word. For the next few days, they barely spoke. Ethan cooked his meals quietly. She hunted her food outside. He set up sleeping quarters on opposite ends of the house. She didn't thank him, but she also didn't stop him. One night, a cold wind blew in from the cliffs. Leora's body shivered slightly in her thin battle suit. Without a word, Ethan placed a blanket on her table and walked away. She stared at it for minutes before grabbing it. He didn't ask for anything in return. During the fourth night, Leora left early to train in the rocky field outside the shelter. She moved through combat forms, blades in both hands. Her body was fast, strong, and focused. But her foot twisted on loose stone, and she tumbled hard. Hitting her shoulder, she groaned softly, trying to stand, but her leg throbbed. The pain was sharp. She didn't want help. She didn't want him to see her like this. But Ethan had followed, worried. He knelt beside her. "You're hurt." "Leave me," she snapped. He ignored the tone. "Your leg's bleeding." He gently reached for her. She almost struck him, but something in his eyes made her pause. There was no pity, no mockery. Just calm, quiet concern. He removed his jacket, wrapped it around her leg, and helped her stand. His hands were steady and warm. His voice was soft, but firm. "Let's get you inside." She didn't speak as he guided her back. She didn't thank him either. But when he placed her down gently near the fire, she didn't move away. Ethan brought her water, bandages, and sat on the floor nearby. He didn't try to talk. He didn't ask questions. He just stayed there, watching the flames. After a while, she looked at him. "Why did you not laugh?" she asked. He glanced over. "At what? My fall? My injury? Your people always call us monsters. I thought you would enjoy this." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I'm tired of war. I don't enjoy seeing anyone in pain." Leora said nothing more, but her eyes stayed on him longer than before. The next day, she walked with a slight limp. Ethan noticed but didn't mention it. Instead, he handed her a small meal he had prepared. It was simple bread and protein paste. She looked at it then. At him, "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because we live together now," Ethan said. "And it doesn't have to be awful." She didn't respond. But she took the food. That night, she sat near the fire again, closer than before. Days passed, and with time, the silence between them grew softer. Leora stopped barking orders. Ethan stopped staying out of her way. They began to share simple words: weather, the sky, training habits. Once, Ethan told her about Earth's oceans. She listened, though her face stayed calm. In return, she shared a story about the lava rivers on her homeworld. They were small moments, but they built something neither could name. Leora still didn't trust easily, but something about Ethan's patience made her feel strange. Not weak, not angry, just unsettled in a new way. One evening, as the two sat beside the fire, Ethan passed her a cup of warm herbal drink. Their fingers brushed slightly. Lara single quotes. Strange feeling shot through her chest, warm, fast, and unfamiliar. She quickly pulled her hand back and looked away. Ethan didn't notice or pretended not to. She watched him as he stared. At the fire, his face was peaceful, not proud, not smug, like he didn't need to win or prove anything, and that confused her more than anything else. The morning sun rose slowly over the rocky cliffs of the neutral moon. A soft orange light spilled into the small shelter where Ethan and Leora now lived. The wind outside had calmed, and silence filled the air. Leora opened her eyes and found herself already watching him. Ethan was quietly placing dried food on a small metal plate. He moved carefully, as if not to disturb her. When he noticed she was awake, he gave a small nod. "Morning," he said softly. She blinked, surprised. It was such a simple word, and yet it felt strange, like something warm in the cold place inside her. "Morning," she answered, without thinking. Ethan offered her the plate. "I know it's not great, but it'll keep us going." Leora took the food, sitting cross-legged by the small fire pit. They ate in silence. But this time, it was not the silence of strangers. It was something quieter, something less tense. After they finished eating, Ethan cleaned the dishes. Leora watched him, arms crossed, leaning against the wall. There had been no orders, no rules forcing him to do these tasks. He just did them because they needed to be done. He never once told her what to do. Liora, a princess and war leader, had spent her whole life giving commands and following structure, but this human, he followed no command and yet carried peace within him. She stepped outside after a while, breathing in the cold morning air. The rocky fields stretched far, the gray ground mixed with patches of dry grass. She began her combat forms, moving slowly because of her healing leg. Ethan appeared behind her and sat on a rock nearby, watching. "You're improving," he said. Gently. "I always improve," she answered, without looking at him. He smiled a little at her response. "That's good. We'll need to be strong if anything happens." She paused mid-swing. "You speak of danger? Do you expect it here?" Looked up at the sky. "Danger doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it's memories. Sometimes it's inside us." Leora turned fully to face him. "You speak in puzzles?" He gave a soft laugh. "I've had time to think. Maybe too much time." She studied him. This human was not like the one she had fought. He didn't act proud or loud. He didn't speak of victory or revenge. And yet he held something firm inside. Not strength of arms, but strength of spirit. She returned to her form. This time, she imagined fighting beside him, not against him. Hours passed. Evening came. They shared another quiet meal. Leora placed a piece of her own dried meat on Ethan's plate, without a word. He looked at it, then at her. "Thank you." Nodded. "You've shared." I returned the gesture. He accepted it with a soft smile. Later, as they both sat by the fire, Ethan began to speak. "I wasn't always a soldier," he said. "I worked in space farming. I had a brother. It was in the Navy." Leora looked at him. "What happened to him?" Ethan stared at the flames. "He died during the first attack. His ship was destroyed near Zirin space." Leora's body stiffened. Her people had called that a victory. She had even received honors. "For leading the operation near that zone, I'm sorry," she said quietly, the words feeling strange on her tongue. Ethan nodded. "It's not your fault. Not really. We were all just following orders." Leora asked, "Do you hate me for it?" Ethan's eyes met hers. "No, I don't have space left in me for hate." For the first time, Leora looked away. Her chest felt tight. No one from her world had ever spoken like that. That night, she lay in her bed but couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about his words, about how he carried so much loss, and still offered kindness. The next morning, Leora found Ethan working on the roof. Part of the cover had been damaged in a recent storm. She climbed up to help. "You don't have to," he said. "I want to," she answered simply. Together. They fixed the panel, they passed tools, shared glances, said little, but something had changed. The cold between them had become something else. Not warm yet, but not frozen either. That afternoon, they walked together through the rocky field. The wind was strong, but they stayed close. Leora asked about Earth's skies. Ethan asked about Ziren's moons. They laughed once when Ethan tripped and nearly fell. Leora caught him and smirked. "You humans are not made for uneven ground," she teased. "True," he chuckled. "But I'm glad you were there." They stopped by a small stream. The water was clean. Ethan took a drink and handed her the cup. When their hands touched, a spark moved between them again. Liora froze for a second, her eyes locking with his. "What is that feeling?" She whispered. Ethan's voice was quiet. "I don't know, but I feel it too." They didn't speak more about it. But on the way back, they walked closer than before. That night, as the fire warmed their small shelter, Leora sat beside Ethan. Not across the room, not apart. Beside. He didn't move away. "Ethan," she said, her voice low. Double quotes, "Yeah. Was this marriage meant to break me?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, it was supposed to stop a war, but maybe it's doing something else too. What's that? Maybe it's building something new?" She didn't respond. But for the first time, she smiled. Just a little. Days turned into weeks. The quiet moon, once a place of punishment for Leora, started to feel less like a cage and more like something softer. Not home, not yet. But not just a prison either. Every morning, she would wake to the smell of warm tea. Ethan always made 2 cups. One for himself, one for her. Even when she didn't drink it, he still made it. She drank it without question. They had built a small rhythm. Leora would train at dawn. Ethan would work on repairs around the shelter. Sometimes they worked side by side. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the sky. It was during one of those silent evenings that Ethan asked something unexpected. "What was your world like when you were a child?" Leora looked up, her fingers still holding the edge of a small energy blade she had been cleaning. "Cold," she said. "Our cities are made of stone and metal. We do not decorate. Everything is for function. When I was 5, I was sent to military school. My mother did not visit again." Ethan's eyes lowered. "That's harsh. It is normal," she said. "For us." He thought for a second. "Did you ever laugh?" "Play," she frowned. "I was not trained for laughter. I was trained for battle." Ethan gave a soft smile. "I think laughter is a kind of strength too," Leora didn't answer. But his words stayed in her mind. Later that night, as they shared a meal, Ethan told her about his mother, about the time she had painted stars on his bedroom ceiling, just so he could sleep better. Leora listened carefully, imagining what a painted ceiling might feel like. "You talk about your mother with softness," she said. "She was kind," Ethan said. "She believed kindness made people brave." Leora looked down at her hands trained to fight, to command, never to comfort. "I wonder what I would be if I had known that kind of kindness." "Maybe you're becoming that now," he replied. Their eyes met again. That warm feeling returned, not sharp or dangerous, but slow, like sunlight after a storm. The next morning, a ship landed near the edge of the valley. Laura stood quickly, her eyes narrowing. "Ziren colors," she said. Ethan walked to her side. "Friends of yours?" "No," she said. "Inspectors. They come to test my loyalty." 2 tall, armored Ziren soldiers stepped out of the ship. Their skin was dark silver, and their expressions cold. One of them, Commander Veldin, had been her instructor years ago. "Princess," he said, "you've grown soft." "I've survived," she replied calmly. Veldin's eyes moved to Ethan. "And this is the human husband?" "He looks weak." Ethan didn't flinch. I've been called worse. Leora stepped between them. You are guests. Speak with respect. Veldon raised a brow. So you protect him now? Leora didn't answer. Veldon walked past her and examined the shelter. He pointed to the small decorations Ethan had made, a carved wooden bird, a drawing of Earth's mountains. Human softness, Veldon said with disgust. It has infected you. Leora's hand tightened around the handle of her belt blade, but she held her silence. You were once a blade of the Empire, Veldon said. Now you share food with him? I share peace, Leora said quietly. Veldon looked at her with disappointment. Your father will not accept this change. You're a symbol of Ziran's strength. Maybe strength is not what we thought it was, she said. He walked toward Ethan again, as if trying to provoke him. You think you've tamed her? You think you're equals? Ethan looked him in the eye. I don't think I've tamed anyone. I just treat her like a person. That reply caught Veldon off guard. He stepped back and gave a sharp nod. We will report your condition, he said to Leora, but expect consequences. After they left, the valley was quiet again. Leora stood still for a long time, eyes on the sky. Ethan came to her side. Are you okay? I don't know, she admitted. They sat by the fire that night, both quiet. Then Leora said, in my world, feelings are seen as weakness. But here, with you, they feel like strength. Ethan looked at her. Feelings help us grow. They help us connect. Leora turned toward him. You're not what I expected. And you're not what I feared, he replied. There was a long pause. Then slowly, Leora reached for his hand. For a moment, they just held it there. No words, just warmth. You were supposed to be a sentence, she whispered. But now, you feel like a beginning. Ethan smiled softly. Same here. As the fire flickered to hearts once enemies. When strangers beat, quietly side by side, learning what it meant to be more than weapons, more than duty, learning what it meant to be human. After the visit from the Ziran inspectors, something inside Leora stayed unsettled. She trained longer each morning, her movements sharper than before. Her eyes watched the sky more often, as if expecting another ship to land. Ethan noticed the change. Are you waiting for something? He asked one evening while they shared dinner. Leah hesitated before answering. I think they will come back. And this time, not to speak. Ethan leaned back against the wall. To take you? Or punish me for changing, she said. Is that what you think you've done? He asked softly. She looked at him. I know I've changed, and I fear what that means in their eyes. Ethan placed his cup down, and in your own eyes. She didn't answer. The next few days were quiet but tense. Leora began to pack small things secretly, just in case. She didn't tell Ethan, but he noticed her careful movements, the way she checked her blade more often, or the way she stared into the distance too long. One afternoon, as clouds rolled across the sky, Ethan returned from the nearby stream with fresh water. Leora was sitting by the fire, sharpening a weapon. He sat beside her. Can I ask something? She gave a small nod. Do you regret coming here? Leora stopped sharpening. She looked into the flames. At first, yes. I hated everything about this place. Hated you. Hated the silence. She paused. But now I don't know what I feel. Ethan smiled gently. Feelings are messy. She looked at him. They are new. Soft wind blew through the shelter. Leora's fingers reached out slowly and touched Ethan's hand. When you touch me, she said quietly, it feels like I'm real. Not a soldier, not a princess, just a person. Ethan's eyes softened. You are a person, a good one. She smiled faintly. I've done terrible things. So have I, he said. But that doesn't mean we can't be better now. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed from the small communication screen built into the wall. Leora stood quickly and walked over. Her body tensed as she read the message. It's from the Ziran High Command, she said. Ethan stood beside her. What does it say? My father wants me to return now. They both stood in silence. Do you have to go? Ethan asked. If I don't, Leora said, They may see it as betrayal. Ethan looked down. So, this is the end of the sentence. Leora looked at him, her chest tight. Maybe, but I don't want it to be. He met her eyes. Then, don't go. It's not that simple, she whispered. The next morning, she was quiet. She moved like a shadow, packing a few things. Ethan helped without speaking. When she stepped outside to breathe in the cold air, she saw something that made her stop. A small wooden carving sat on a stone outside the shelter. It was shaped like two hands touching. Ethan had carved it. He hadn't told her. He had just left it there, like a quiet goodbye. She picked it up, staring at the shape. When she went back inside, she found him sitting at the table, holding a small bag I made. "You some food for the trip," he said. "Thank you," she replied. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She stood at the door, holding the bag in one hand and the carving in the other. Her ship was waiting just beyond the cliffs. She took one step forward, then stopped. "Ethan," she said, not turning around, "what would you do if I stayed?" "I'd make more carvings," he said, "and maybe I'd smile more." She closed her eyes, then she turned and walked back to him. "I can't go back to what I was," she said. "I don't want to." He stood slowly. "You don't have to?" She looked up at him. "But they will come. They will see this is treason." "Then we face it together," he said. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, from something else. Hope. That night, she didn't sleep in the corner of the shelter. She slept beside Ethan, their hands gently touching, both holding on to something new. Not fear, not duty, but choice. The days that followed were calm, but the peace felt fragile, like quiet before a storm. Leora stayed close to Ethan now. They cooked together, trained together, and spoke more openly. The silence between them had changed into something warm. She smiled more, even laughed once when Ethan slipped on wet stones near the stream. He laughed too. "You'll never let me forget that, will you?" "Never," she said with a soft grin. They shared meals like friends. But their glances, their small touches, said something more. Leora had started sitting closer at night, her head resting near Ethan's shoulder. Sometimes they stayed up late just talking about stars, about childhood dreams, about what they would do if they had no past chasing them. But no matter how peaceful the days were, Leora felt a quiet fear growing inside her. She had chosen to stay, but the Ziran Empire wouldn't forget her choice. One evening, while they were working on reinforcing the outer wall, a sound echoed from above. A ship. It wasn't like the small inspection vessel that came before. This one was bigger. Darker. Darker. Liora. Single quotes. "That's a war transport." Ethan stood beside her. "They're here for you." She didn't speak. She just stared at the ship as it landed near the cliffs. The wind from its thrusters blew dust and rocks across the valley. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. "You don't have to go with them," Ethan said, his voice steady. "If I don't, they might attack. Then we won't be alone." Leora looked at him. "Why do you keep standing beside me, even now?" "Because I choose you," Ethan said. "No one forced me to care." Before she could reply, the ship's door opened. 10 armored Ziran soldiers stepped out. Their movements were strict, sharp, and cold. At their center walked someone she never expected to see again. Her father, Emperor Calix. His armor was heavier than any she'd seen. Black and red with sharp edges. His eyes were the same as hers, blue like frozen water. He stopped a few feet from them. "Leora," he said, voice strong, "you have brought shame." She stood tall. "I have found peace." "With a human?" he scoffed. "With someone who sees me," she said. He stepped forward, looking down at Ethan. "You are soft. My daughter was a blade. Now she is dull." Ethan didn't flinch. "She's more than a weapon." Leora stepped between them. "Say what you came to say." Her father stared at her. "You were once my heir. You return now. We can erase this mistake. And if I don't," his voice grew colder, "then you will be hunted, marked as a traitor. Your name will be removed from our history. Leora took a breath, then remove it. A quiet fell over the valley. Even the wind seemed to pause. Her father stared for a long time and gave a signal to the soldiers. "Burn this place," he ordered. "Let her see what she chose." Leora's body moved fast. She pulled out her blade and stood in front of Ethan. "No," she said. Ethan pulled his small weapon too. It was old, not strong, but his hands were steady. "We stand together," he said. The soldiers moved forward. But something unexpected happened. Leora didn't attack. She spoke. "Stop," she shouted. "You all know me. I trained many of you. Look at me." The soldiers hesitated. "I am still the same warrior. But now, I understand something greater than fear, greater than orders." Her voice grew louder. "This human didn't defeat me. He showed me strength I didn't know, kindness I didn't believe in. We were taught to hide our hearts," she said, looking at all of them. "But what if we were wrong?" For a moment no one moved. Then one soldier lowered his weapon. Then another. Her father's eyes narrowed. "You will regret this." "Maybe," she said, "but it will be my choice." He looked around, saw the loyalty breaking, and gave a sharp gesture. "Retreat," he said. The soldiers followed. Some looked back, not with anger, not with hate, but with something close to respect. As the ship lifted into the sky, Leora finally let out a breath. Ethan stepped beside her. "You stood against them, against your father." "I didn't do it alone," she said. They stood in the silence that followed, hands touching gently. The sentence that once chained her had become a path to freedom, and now she was ready to walk it with him. The sky returned to quiet after the Xiran warship disappeared beyond the clouds. Only the wind remained, brushing over the rocks and broken patches of grass near the shelter. Near the shelter, Laura stood still for a long time. The chest rose and fell slowly. The weight of what had just happened still pressed on her shoulders, but it was different now, no longer a burden of fear, but one of choice. Ethan stepped beside her, placing a gentle hand on her back. "They're gone," he said quietly. Liora nodded. For now, they walked back to the shelter, hand in hand. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The place looked unchanged. The same cracked walls, the same small table, the same fire pit that had warmed them so many nights. But it all felt different now. It felt like home. Liora sat down near the fire and stared into the flames. Ethan sat across from her, watching her closely. "Do you think your father will return?" he asked. "No," she said, "not himself. But others might come, ones who believe in the old ways. We'll try to undo what we've built here." Ethan was quiet, and he said, "We'll be ready." She looked at him, surprised by how calm he sounded. "You're not afraid?" she asked. "I am," he replied, "but not of them. I'm more afraid of losing this. What we found here." Leora's face softened. "So am I." Morning, they began preparing the shelter. They fixed the damaged walls, added stronger locks to the doors, and built a lookout post above the ridge. They worked together, never needing too many words. Their movements were smooth, like partners who trusted each other completely. During the afternoons, they trained. Leora taught Ethan new techniques: how to move faster, how to strike smarter, how to breathe through the fight. Ethan, in return, taught her how to plant small crops near the stream, how to find edible roots, how to build traps for small animals. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were building a life. One evening, as the orange sky faded into stars, Leora stood near the edge of the cliff, looking out across the valley. Ethan joined her, wrapping a warm blanket around her shoulders. "Do you miss your world?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "Not the battles, not the cold halls, but the stars above my city. They look different." "Do they still feel like home?" "No," she said softly. "This does." He looked at her. "Do you ever wonder how it all happened? How we went from enemies to this?" "Every day," she replied with a small smile. "You were supposed to be a punishment, but instead, you became my peace." Ethan took her hand and squeezed it gently. "I think," he said, "we were both sentenced to find each other." They stood in silence, watching the stars, the air. It was cool, but their hands were warm. A soft beeping sound interrupted the moment. Ethan pulled out the old communicator. A message blinked across the screen. Earth delegation requesting contact. He looked at Leora. Should we answer? She nodded. We are not hiding anymore. Ethan pressed a button. A small hologram. Appeared a human woman with gray hair and a calm face. This is Ambassador Hale of the Earth Peace Division, the woman said. We've received reports of your situation. We'd like to speak with both of you. Ethan replied. We're listening. You and your wife have caused discussion, both on Earth and in Ziran space. You've become a symbol of something. Bigger than a treaty? Some want to protect you. Others want to silence you. Leora stepped forward. We're not trying to be symbols. We just want to live. We understand, Hale said. But understand this, your story matters now. People are watching. If you're willing, we can offer protection, a new location, allies.
Allies.
She met his eyes. We stay, she said. This is our ground. We won't run. Very well, Hale replied. We'll keep a watch from orbit. If you ever need us, send a signal. The message ended. Ethan placed the communicator down. So, he said, we're not just a married couple anymore. We're a message to the galaxy. Leora smiled. Let them watch. Won't change who we are. Days passed, then weeks. No ships came. No soldiers arrived. Just wind stars. And the sound of two hearts beating stronger each day. Liora began carving symbols into the rocks near their home stories of their journey. Not with pride, but with truth. Ethan helped her, drawing stars and birds in hands. One night, as the fire glowed low and their hands brushed again. Ethan said, when we first met, I didn't think you even liked me. Leora laughed softly. I didn't. What changed? You didn't try to change me, she said. You just let me be, and you stayed. I'm glad I did. So am I. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. No words. Just warmth. Just quiet. No war, no fear. Only the touch of something real. Something chosen. Something shared. The sentence had ended long ago, but the love it led to was just beginning.